Welcome to the DX Today podcast, where you get facts and no hype. I'm Ryan, and joining me today is Chloe. Chloe, we've spent the last few years talking about chatbots, LLMs, and prompts. But according to a massive industry shift that just went public on December 9th, 2025, that era is officially behind us.
It really is, Ryan. We are moving from generative AI, where the machine just gives you words or images, to agentic AI, where the machine actually does the work. And the big news is the formation of the Agentic AI Foundation, or the AAIF. This isn't just a small group of startups. It's a powerhouse coalition hosted by the Linux Foundation. We're talking OpenAI, Anthropic, and Block as founding stewards, with support from Google, Microsoft, AWS, Bloomberg, and Cloudflare.
It's a who's who of the tech world. And for those listening who might be skeptical, because we've seen plenty of foundations come and go, this one is different. They aren't just releasing white papers. They are standardizing the global intelligence layer. This is about preventing a future where your AI agents are trapped in silos.
Exactly. Let's back up for a second for the historical context, because that's crucial to understanding why this matters. Throughout 2024 and early 2025, we saw this explosion of agents. These are AI systems that can plan, reason, and execute multi-stage workflows, like booking a whole business trip or managing a supply chain. But there was a massive problem: fragmentation.
Right. If you built an agent using OpenAI's tools, it couldn't talk to an agent built on Anthropic's tools. Every provider had their own proprietary protocol. It was like the early days of the internet, where different networks couldn't talk to each other. If you were a CTO, you were terrified of vendor lock-in. If you spent millions building an autonomous agent ecosystem on one model, you were essentially trapped.
And that's what the AAIF is solving. They are looking at the success of the World Wide Web and the Linux kernel and saying, we need a shared infrastructure. They want an internet of agents. Ryan, you've been looking at the technical pillars of this announcement. There are 3 big ones, right?
3 core contributions that are now under neutral governance. Let's start with the big one, the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. This was originally developed by Anthropic. Think of MCP as a universal plug for AI.
Like a USB port for intelligence?
That's a great way to put it. Before MCP, if you wanted an agent to access your data in Slack or GitHub, you had to write custom, messy code for every single integration. With MCP, you build an MCP server once. Any compliant agent, doesn't matter if it's from Google, OpenAI, or an open source model, can then use that server to access the data. As of this month, there are over 10,000 MCP servers out there. That is an incredible adoption rate, and it really lowers the barrier for developers. But it's not just about how they connect to data. It's about how they understand the projects they're working on. That's where OpenAI's contribution comes in, agents.md. Right. This one is deceptively simple but incredibly powerful. It's a markdown-based convention. It lives right in your project's code repository. Think of it as a README for robots. It tells an autonomous coding agent exactly how the project is structured, what the build rules are, and how it should behave.
Interesting. So instead of the agent having to guess or waste tokens trying to figure out how to run a test, it just reads the agents.md file and knows exactly what to do.
Exactly. And the scale of this is already massive. Over 60,000 open source projects have adopted the standard in just the last few months. It creates a consistent environment for agents to actually be productive without a human holding their hand every step of the way.
And then we have the third pillar, the Goose framework. This was donated by Block, Jack Dorsey's company, formerly known as Square. Goose is essentially the orchestration layer. It's an open source framework that shows how these agents can use things like MCP to perform local-first computing tasks. It's about making sure these agents are secure and transparent while they work on your actual machine. Let's talk about the competitive landscape for a minute, because while the AAIF is the big news, they aren't the only ones in the room. Chloe, you've been tracking what Google is doing with agent-to-agent. Right, the A2A protocol. It's interesting. While the AAIF is focusing on the connection layer with MCP, Google's A2A is more of a messaging layer. It's specifically about how 2 different agents delegate tasks to each other. Imagine your personal assistant agent talking to a dry cleaner's inventory agent. A2A handles that conversation. And there's also Agent C, a group involving Cisco and LangChain, focusing on a universal agentic interoperability language. It feels like the industry is finally realizing that the walled garden approach is a losing strategy. If the agents can't talk to each other, the whole ecosystem stalls. Well, and the money reflects that too. The data we're seeing is pretty staggering. Gartner's predicting that by 2026, which is just around the corner, 40% of all enterprise applications will have these task-specific agents embedded in them. And McKinsey is backing that up with some efficiency numbers. They found that organizations that are already scaling these agentic systems are seeing up to a 23% increase in operational efficiency. We aren't just talking about saving a few minutes here and there. We're talking about customer service and data analysis being handled autonomously at scale. That 23% is massive for a large enterprise. But Ryan, as a no-nonsense guy, I know you're thinking about the risks. If we have thousands of autonomous agents running around, how do we know they're safe? That is the million-dollar question, Chloe. And the AAIF actually addressed this. They are building what they call a safety and trust layer. One of the most interesting concepts they've introduced is the agent passport. An agent passport, like show me your papers for AI? Precisely. It's a cryptographic standard. It ensures that an agent's identity, its permissions, and its origin can be verified instantly. If an agent tries to access a database, the system can check its passport to see if it actually has the authority to be there. This is critical for complying with things like the EU AI Act. I suppose you also need a way to see what they've been up to. Absolutely. They are standardizing tamper-proof audit trails. Every autonomous action an agent takes is logged in a way that can't be altered. If something goes wrong, if an agent accidentally deletes a production database or makes a bad trade, you have a clear forensic record of exactly why it made that decision. It's basically a black box for AI agents. That's going to be a requirement for any bank or healthcare provider before they even think about deploying this. And then there's the cross-platform security. The AAIIT is working on token-based authentication that allows, say, an agent hosted on AWS to safely pull data from a Google Cloud database without exposing sensitive credentials. It's the plumbing that makes the whole thing viable for the enterprise. So looking ahead to 2026, what's the roadmap? Because the foundation is just getting started. They have a three-part plan. First, they want to onboard more startups. They don't want this to just be a big tech club. They need the niche tool builders to adopt these standards for them to truly become universal. And then there's the Universal Skills Library. This part fascinates me. The idea is that an agent can learn a skill, like how to file a tax return or how to refactor Python code, and then export that skill to another agent on a completely different platform. It's essentially the matrix for AI. I know Kung Fu, but for software. And the final piece is consumer integration. We've been talking a lot about enterprises, but in 2026, we're going to see this on our phones. Your mobile phone agent will be able to negotiate directly with a store's inventory agent to find the best price on a pair of shoes and handle the entire transaction without you ever opening an app. It really feels like the era of there's an app for that is being replaced by there's an agent for that. It is. And look, the takeaway here is that the walled garden era of AI, where you were either an OpenAI shop or a Google shop, is ending. The tech giants have realized that they'll make more money if the whole ecosystem grows together. By choosing collaboration over isolation, they're building the pipes and protocols for the next decade. It's a bold bet on an open future. Instead of competing on who has the best connector, they are going to compete on who has the most intelligent model. The infrastructure is becoming a public good. Exactly. The AAIF has moved AI standardization from a theoretical, maybe one day, to a functional reality. It's not just hype, it's the new plumbing of the digital world. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up. This has been a deep dive into something that might sound dry on the surface, standards and foundations, but it's actually the foundation of how we'll interact with technology for the next 10 years. Couldn't agree more. For more technical breakdowns and the latest on the agentic shift, stay tuned. I'm Ryan. And I'm Chloe.
Thanks for listening to DX Today. No hype, just the facts. We'll see you in the next episode.